Hello everyone and welcome to this new tutorial on my channel. And in this video I'll be showing you how to make this little Eeyore plushie. And I think he is really adorable, especially with his little tail with the bow. And we already had Pooh, Piglet and Tigger as the Pooh and Friends family. So I'm really glad to add Eeyore here as a new member. I hope you will like the video. If you like it, don't forget to give the thumbs up. This would really help me a lot. And let's get started. I'm going to be using 5 different colors of yarn for Eeyore. Blue, purple for the belly and the bit of purple in the ears, peach or a beige color for the muzzle, pink for the bow on the tail and black for the hairs. You'll need a crochet hook. I'm using a 3mm hook, scissors, a darning needle, safety eyes, these are 6mm, a stitch marker, black embroidery yarn. However, if you don't have embroidery yarn, you can also use regular yarn and twisty ends to make it thinner. Glue for adding the bit of purple in the ears. Sewing pins are optional, but these will make sewing on the different parts easier. And some stuffing. First, we're gonna make the base of Eeyore. And after that, we're gonna make all of the details. So for making the base, we're gonna start here, right on top, and we're gonna work our way down like this. So for that, grab your blue yarn, and we're gonna start off by making a magic circle. If you're not entirely sure how to do this, I've got a separate video on my channel explaining step by step how I'm always doing it, and I will link that down below in the description. Okay. So for the first round, we're gonna do 6 single crochet into the magic circle. So for that, we're gonna go into the magic circle, pull up a loop. Now you got 2 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through the 2 loops. That's our first single crochet. We're gonna make a total of 6. Okay, so now we can close the magic circle. Then we can insert our stitch marker into the last stitch that we did. So that's right here. And that was it for the first round. For the second round, we're gonna do increases in all of the stitches that we got around. So we'll be doing a total of 6 increases. And because of that, we're gonna go up from a stitch count of 6 to a stitch count of 12. All right, so let's find our first stitch. And we're gonna do a single crochet. Now, because we're gonna do an increase, we're gonna go back into the same space and do another single crochet in there. Now we've done our first increase. That was our second increase. We're gonna go to the next stitch, do our third. And we're going to do our last increase into the stitch with the stitch marker. So we're going to take this stitch marker out and we're going to do our last increase here. All right. Now put your stitch marker back into the last stitch that you did. So that's the one right there. And that was it for the second round. Now for the third round, we're gonna do 1 single crochet into the first stitch and do an increase into the second. We're gonna repeat this all the way around, and because of that, we're gonna go up from a stitch count of 12 to a stitch count of 18. Okay, so let's do that. Do 1 single crochet into the first stitch and do an increase into the second. 1 into the first and an increase into the second. we're going to repeat this all the way around, and you should be putting in your last increase into the stitch with the stitch marker. Okay, so let's do that, and I will meet you at the end of this round. Okay, so I'm going to do my last increase now. And now let's put our stitch marker back into the last stitch. And that was it for the third round. Now for round 4, we're going to do 1 single crochet into the first 2 stitches, and we're going to do an increase into the third stitch. We're going to repeat this all the way around, and because of that we're going to go up from a stitch count of 18 to a stitch count of 24. Alright, so let's do that. Do 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 into the second, and an increase into the third. 1 into the first, 1 into the second, and an increase into the third. Okay, we're going to repeat this all the way around, and you should be putting in your last increase into the stitch with the stitch marker. So let's do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 4. Okay, I'm doing my last increase now. Then I'm going to put my stitch marker back into the last stitch that we did. And that was it for round 4. Okay, so now for round 5 till 13, so for a total of 9 rounds, we're just going to do 1 single crochet in all of the stitches that we got around. So the stitch count shouldn't change, and you should be moving your stitch marker a total of 9 times. Okay, so this will take you quite some time. Just pause this video and I will meet you at the end of round 13. Okay, so once you're done with round 13, your work should look something like this. Now let's take our crochet hook out for a moment, because this is the perfect moment to insert the eyes. So let's grab those. And we're gonna put the eyes right in between round 6 and 7. So when we count from the top, this is the first round, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to put the eyes right in between here. Let's put this eye here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And for the second eye, we're going to put it 3 stitches apart from this eye. So one way I like to make sure that these are 3 stitches apart is by counting holes going from the first eye. So here we inserted the first eye. This is the first hole next to this eye, right in between round 6 and 7. This is the second hole, and this is the third hole. We're gonna insert the eye into the third hole from the first eye. So let's put it right in here. And now when we look in between the eyes, there should be 2 holes. So one there and one there. Okay, so that way you know that these are 3 stitches apart. Okay, so now let's attach the backs to the eyes. We can just click them on. Like that. And now the eyes are attached. Okay, so now let's continue crocheting, and we're at round 14. And for round 14, we're gonna do 1 single crochet into the first stitch, and we're gonna do a decrease for the second and the third stitch. We're gonna repeat this all the way around, and because of that, we're gonna go down from a stitch count of 24 to a stitch count of 16. Okay, so let's do that. Do 1 single crochet into the first stitch. And for making the decrease, we're gonna make an invisible decrease. So for that, we're only gonna grab the front loops of the next 2 stitches. So we're not gonna go underneath the entire stitch like this. We're gonna go back a little bit and only grab the front loop, like that. Keep that on your hook, and we're gonna grab the front loop of the next stitch as well. Like that. Then we're going to yarn over, pull it through the front loops, yarn over, pull it through the 2 loops. That's an invisible decrease. Okay, so do 1 into the first and a decrease for the next 2 stitches. Okay, we're going to repeat this all the way around, and you should be putting in your last decrease using the stitch of the stitch marker together with the stitch right in front of the stitch marker. Okay, so let's do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 14. Okay, so now I have 1 stitch left in front of the stitch marker, and now I'm gonna do my last decrease. All right, let's insert our stitch marker back into the stitch. And that was it for round 14. Now is the perfect moment to do most of your stuffing for Eeyore, because now the hole is still quite large. After the next round, the hole is going to be a lot smaller. You can still add stuffing then, but it will be a little bit more difficult. So it's best to do most of your stuffing right now. So just put some in there. But make sure that it's not going to be in the way for when you're going to continue crocheting. Okay, so something like this is okay for now. Now I'm going to attach my hook again, and we can continue crocheting. So the next round is round 15, and for round 15 we're gonna do decreases in all of the stitches that we got around. So we'll be doing a total of 8 decreases, and because of that we're gonna go down from a stitch count of 16 to a stitch count of 8. Okay, so let's do that. Grab the front loops of the next 2 stitches. Do a decrease. Grab the front loops of the next 2 stitches. And do a decrease. Okay, so we're going to repeat this all the way around, and once again you should be putting in your decrease in the last decrease into the stitch with the stitch marker and the stitch right in front of that one. Okay, so let's do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 15. Okay, so now I have 1 stitch left in front of the stitch marker, and I'm gonna take the stitch marker out and do my last decrease. All right, now we don't need to reinsert the stitch marker. We can just pull our crochet hook out. And now I'm gonna add my last bit of stuffing. And because the hole is a lot smaller, I'm gonna be using my scissors for this. And just keep adding stuffing till you're happy with the way it feels. Okay, so once you're happy with the amount of stuffing, we can do the closing part. However, before doing the closing, I'd like to do 2 more decreases, just to make sure that we got a stitch count of 6 around, because I prefer that for doing the closing. So I'm gonna do 2 more decreases. So this is 1 and this is 2. And after that, I'm gonna do a slip stitch. So into the next stitch, I'm gonna go in there, pull up a loop, pull it through the stitch and through the loop on my hook all at once. Okay, then we can cut the yarn short and pull it through. Okay. Now for doing the closing part, you can either copy me or do your own thing. I like to look for these 2 stitches next to the stitch where we did slip stitch. So here we did slip stitch, this is the next stitch, and this is the stitch after that. I'm gonna go in here and come out of this stitch. And then I'm gonna grab the yarn end and pull it through. Okay, I'm gonna do that once more. So here is the stitch with our yarn end. This is the next stitch, and this is the stitch after the next stitch. I'm gonna go in there and come out of this one. grab the yarn, pull it through. Okay, now I'm gonna create a loop, and I'm gonna do that by going into the same space where our yarn end is coming out of. I'm gonna come out of the next stitch right here. Then I'm gonna pull the yarn through here, create a loop, don't pull it through entirely. Now I'm not gonna pull this end, which makes this yarn end shorter. I'm gonna pull the other end and push down on the ring here with my thumb. And by doing that, it closes up very nicely, like this. Okay, then I'm gonna grab the yarn end and pull it through the loop to create a knot. Then I'm gonna go into a random stitch on my work, for example, this one right here. I'm gonna come out of the stitch close to the yarn end. I'm gonna grab the yarn end, pull it through, and then I'm gonna cut it short with my scissors. Okay. And that was it for the base of Eeyore. Okay, so now we're gonna start making the details. And first, let's make the muzzle. And for the muzzle, I'm gonna be using a peach color. However, you could use a beige or white color as well. Okay, so we're gonna start off by making a magic circle once again. And for the first round, we're gonna do 6 single crochet into the magic circle. So let's do that. 5 and 6. Okay, then we can close the magic circle. And let's insert a stitch marker into the last stitch. It's right here. And that was it for the first round. Now for the second round, we're going to do increases in all of the stitches that we got around. So we'll be doing a total of 6 increases. And because of that, we're going to go up from a stitch count of 6 to a stitch count of 12. Okay, so let's find our first stitch. And do a single crochet. Now go back into the same space and do another single crochet. That was our first increase. Now let's make the second one. Okay, we're gonna repeat this all the way around, and you should be putting in your last increase into the stitch with the stitch marker. Okay, I'm gonna do my last increase here. And that was it for the second round. Now let's put the stitch marker back into the last stitch. Now for the third round, we're just going to do 1 single crochet in all of the stitches that we got around. So we'll just be doing a total of 12 single crochet. Okay, so let's do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 3. Okay, I'm doing my last single crochet. Now before finishing off, I'd like to do 1 more single crochet into the next one, because I feel like that makes it look a bit more like a circle all around, like this. And then I'm gonna do a slip stitch into the next stitch, like that. Okay, now I'm gonna cut off a long yarn end, because we're gonna need that for sewing it onto the body and for sewing this together as well. So make sure you leave a long yarn end and then pull it through. Okay, so before sewing it onto the body, let's first hide this yarn end. So this is the yarn end of the magic circle. Attach it to your needle. And we're just gonna move through some stitches on here. This doesn't need to be precise. just something like that, and push it through. Okay, then you can cut it short. Like that. Okay, now we only have this long yarn end left. Let's attach that one to our needle. And now we're gonna sew this circle together like this, so that it will become like half a circle, what we have here as well. Okay, so in order to get that, we're gonna fold our work in half like this, and because of that, stitches are gonna line up with each other. For example, this stitch together with this stitch. And for sewing them together, we're only gonna grab the inner loops of the stitches. So what I mean by that is the two loops closest to each other. So we're only gonna grab this loop of this stitch, the back loop, and we're only gonna grab this loop on this stitch. And we're gonna do that for all of the stitches. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Let's just do it. So in this stitch, we did the slip stitch. Now let's go into the stitch right after that. And let's go into the back loop only and pull it through. And now we're going to connect this stitch to the last stitch that we did, which is the one of the slip stitch. And for that stitch, when we fold it in half, this loop is going to be the closest to the other stitch. Okay. So we're going to pull that through. Okay. So now we sewed these two stitches together. Now let's go to the next two. So we're going to go into this back loop only. And we're going to go through the other loop on this stitch, which is on the inside, basically, like this. Okay, then we're going to move to the next two stitches. So, oops. That's the one right here. We're going to go through this loop and we're going to connect it to the next stitch on this side. And we're going to do that by grabbing the inner loop. Like that. Okay, let's go to the next one. Grab the loop on the inside and grab the loop of the next stitch on the inside. Okay, grab the next stitch and connect it with this one. And then we have one more left. So go into the next stitch and come out of the other stitch here. Okay, so now we have created the shape of the muzzle, which we're gonna sew onto the body. Okay, so for sewing it onto the body, we're gonna sew it on top of rows 7, 8, and 9. So we put the eyes right in between rows 6 and 7. So we're gonna put it on top of this one, and this one. These 3 rows right here. Something I like to do is to keep it in place while we're gonna sew it onto those rows, is to use sewing pins. But this is optional, you can also do it without them, but it makes it easier. Okay, so let's put it right on top of row 7, 8, and 9. Right in between the eyes. And let's put 2 sewing pins in there. Okay, and then you can see whether it's in the middle, whether you need to move it a little bit. And I think it's positioned in the middle like this. So now I'm gonna look at the end where my yarn end is positioned, and I'm gonna look on my work which stitch on the body is closest to my yarn end in between round 7, 8, and 9. So 7, 8, and 9. Okay. I think this stitch is closest to this stitch on the body, right here. So I'm going to go in there and come out of the next stitch, like this. Now I'm just going to grab some loops on the muzzle, which are close to this stitch on the body. So for example, this right here. Okay, and push your needle through. Okay, now I'm going to go back into this space on the body where I just went into, and I'm going to come out of a next space, and this is round 7, this is 8, this is 9, so we're not going to go further underneath these stitches right here. Okay, so I think I'm going to go in here. And as I said, we're gonna crochet on top of rows 7, 8 and 9, so we're not gonna move underneath the stitches right here, even though our muzzle reaches up to here, because it doesn't matter that our muzzle is gonna be sticking a little bit out to the front. We're not gonna sew it underneath this row right here. Okay, let me just show you how I do that. So let's first attach a bit of the muzzle to this stitch, go back into this stitch and come out of the next stitch right in between round 9 and 10 is the bottom of the muzzle. Then we're going to grab some strings on the muzzle which are close to this yarn end. So I'm not going to grab loops right on top of here. I'm going to grab some loops right underneath our muzzle when we face it like this. I hope that makes sense. So just go through there and go back into the same space on the body and come out of the next stitch. Okay, now connect this stitch to some loops on the muzzle as well. And I'm going to go through here, I think. Okay, go back into the same space on the body and come out of the next one. Okay, grab a string close to your yarn end, go through there, go back into the same stitch on the body and come out of a next stitch. Like that. Grab a string on the muzzle, close to this yarn end, go back into the same space on the body, and now I'm gonna move up again. Example to this stitch right here. Okay, then I'm gonna grab a string on the muzzle, go back into this space right here and come out of a next space. For example, this one. Okay, now I'm gonna grab stitches on top of the muzzle. So for that, I'm also just gonna randomly grab some strings. And I'm gonna go back into this stitch and come out of the next one. And I'm gonna come out of the stitch right in between the eyes. Right here. Then I'm gonna grab some strings on the muzzle. I'm gonna go back into this stitch and I'm gonna come out of the next stitch in between the eyes. And then I'm gonna grab some strings on the muzzle again, pull it through. Then I have a little space left, so that's one more stitch, like this. And I'm gonna grab some last strings on the muzzle. These two. Like so. Okay, then I'm gonna go back into this stitch, come out of the next stitch once more. Push it through. And now let's take out these sewing pins and let's check whether we like how it's positioned, because right now we haven't secured it entirely yet, so you can still take it out if you really don't like it. And I think that looks fine for me, so I'm going to keep it like this. Now to finish it off, I'm going to grab one random string on the muzzle close to my yarn end. For example, this one. I'm going to create a loop. Then I'm going to go through the loop with my needle. Like this. I'm going to pull it entirely to create a knot. Okay, now I'm going to go into a stitch on the body close to my yarn end. So that's right here. I'm going to come out somewhere randomly on the other side. I'm going to pull it through. And then I'm going to cut it short. And by that, the muzzle is attached. Okay, so now the muzzle is attached and we're gonna add the details of the nostrils later when we're also gonna sew on the eyebrows. So for now, let's make the belly. Okay, so for the belly, I'm gonna be using this purple lavender color. And I'm gonna start off by making a magic circle. And into the magic circle, I'm gonna do 8 single crochet. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, then we can already close the magic circle. Like that. Then we're gonna do a slip stitch into the first stitch of the previous round. So that's the one right there. I'm gonna go in there and do a slip stitch. Like that. And then the belly is already finished. So let's cut off the yarn. We're gonna cut off quite a long yarn end because we're gonna need that for sewing it onto Eeyore as well. Okay, and pull it through. Now let's already hide this yarn end on the back, which is the yarn end of the magic circle. Let's attach it to our needle. And let's go through some stitches. Push it through and then you can already cut it off. Cut it short. Okay, so for sewing the belly onto the body of Eeyore, we're gonna cover row 11, 12 and 13. So this row right underneath the muzzle is row 10. We're gonna skip this one and we're gonna cover this row, and this row. Okay, so we got 8 stitches on the belly and we're gonna connect these 8 stitches to 8 stitches on the body. So I connect them to 2 stitches right in between round 10 and 11, 2 stitches in between round 11 and 12, 2 stitches in between round 12 and 13, and 2 stitches at the bottom in between round 13 and 14 to make a circle like this. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to place the belly on top of row 11, 12 and 13. And I'm going to make sure that this yarn end lines up with this stitch in between round 10 and 11. This left top stitch. Like that. Okay. Then I'm going to put my sewing pins in here to keep it in place more nicely. Like that. Okay, now let's attach the yarn end to our needle. And I'm going to connect this yarn end right to the stitch in between round 10 and 11, right here. Right there. Okay, then I'm going to move one row down and I'm going to come out of a next stitch which is close to the next stitch on the belly, like this. Okay, pull it through. And now let's look for the next stitch on the belly and just go through the entire stitch like this. So you've got a V on your needle when pushing it through. Okay, like that. Now let's go back into this space. Let's come out one row below there, out of a next stitch, close to the next stitch on the belly. So that's right here. Okay, now let's go through that stitch on the belly. Okay, now let's go back into this same space once again and let's come out of a stitch one row below here, close to the next stitch on the belly. And go through the stitch. Okay, go back into this stitch right here. Let's come out of a stitch right next to it, in between the same two rows. And let's go through the next stitch. Like this. Okay, let's go back into the same stitch on the belly and let's come out one row above it, close to this stitch right here. Let's go through the stitch. Let's go back into this space, come out one row above it, and let's grab the next stitch on the belly. Let's go back into this stitch and let's come out of the last stitch, which is right here at the top in between round 10 and 11 again. Okay, now let's take the sewing pins out so they're not in the way anymore. Let's grab the last stitch, go through there, go back into this space on the belly, come out of the next space once again. And now you can check whether you like how the belly is positioned. If not, you can still take it out because you haven't really secured it yet. Okay, and once you're happy with that, we're going to grab one string close to the yarn end on the belly. This one right here. Then we're going to go through the loop to create a knot like this. Okay, then we're going to go through the stitch close to the yarn end, push it through, and then you can already cut it off. And now the belly is secured as well. Okay, now let's make the ears of Eeyore. So for that, we're gonna grab our blue yarn. And we're gonna start off by making a slip knot. So create a loop and pull the long yarn end through the loop and tighten it by pulling the short yarn end. Okay. And for the ear, we're gonna chain 6. So yarn over and pull through. That's our first chain. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, like this. Then we're gonna do 4 single crochet and we're gonna start from the second chain from the hook. So we're gonna do 1 single crochet into this chain right here. Let's do that. We're gonna do 1 single crochet into the next chain. We're gonna do 1 single crochet into the third. And we're gonna do 1 single crochet into the fourth chain. Okay, now into the last chain, we're gonna do 3 single crochet. So let's do that. 1, 2, and 3, like this. Now we're gonna work on the other side of the chain, right here, and we're gonna do 4 more single crochet here. So we're gonna do 1 single crochet right here, 1 right here, 1 here, and 1 here. And for making these single crochet, I like to put this yarn end on top of my chains right here and do my single crochet around it so that I don't have to hide it afterwards. So it just saves a bit of time. So let's find our first stitch and do a single crochet. Let's find the next one. And as you can see, the yarn end is just on top of the chain when I'm doing the single crochet. Okay. Now let's do the third one and the last one right here. Okay, now I can just cut this one short. Like this. And we can cut off this yarn end as well and make sure you leave quite a long end to it, because we're going to need that for sewing it onto the body, like this. Okay, so now we finished crocheting 1 ear. We're going to need a total of 2 of these, so you can just go back into the video and I will see you again once you got 2 of them. Okay, so once you've got 2 little ears, we can attach them to the head of Eeyore. And as you can see, I've kind of folded them in half and I have put a little purple strand in between there because the insides of Eeyore's ears are actually purple or pink. So this is just a really small detail. So I'm going to show you now how I did that. So first, let's grab just 1 ear right here and let's attach the yarn end to our needle right here. And then I'm gonna fold the inside of the ear, so that's this side, not this one. I'm gonna fold it towards each other. So I'm gonna fold it in half, like that. And especially the top here. And I'm gonna grab the 2 top stitches of the ear, so the top is where my yarn end is. And I'm gonna attach and I'm gonna sew these 2 top stitches together. So I'm gonna go through this stitch and I'm gonna go through this stitch. So if it's difficult to do it all at once, let's just first go through this one and then let's go through this one right here. Like that. And by that we have connected the top of the ear. And now you will have this little shape like this. Okay, so for attaching the ear to Eeyore's head, we're going to attach it right in between round 3 and 4. So for example, let's attach this ear right on this side of the head. So this is round 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to attach the ear, for example, using 1 stitch like this. Okay. So let's first position the ear so that we can see the way it looks. And to decide which stitch we're gonna use. I think it looks best right here. So my yarn end is a bit at the front of the ear. So I'm first gonna go through this stitch and then I'm gonna through this stitch and I'm gonna come out of the stitch 1 to the back of it, like that. So basically we're attaching the ear to one stitch, which is in between round 3 and 4, like that. Now a bit to the back of the ear, I'm gonna grab a string right here to attach it here as well. So for example, this one right here. Okay, like that. Then I'm gonna go back into this stitch and I'm gonna come out one to the front once again, because I really want to secure it. So then I'm gonna grab these 2 strings again at the front of the ear. I'm gonna grab 2 strings. And then I'm gonna go back in here, come out on the back again. And then I'm gonna secure it, and I'm gonna do that by grabbing a string on the ear, create a loop, then we're gonna go through the loop to create a knot and tighten it like this. Then go back into this space close to the yarn end, come out of the other side of the body, and then we can cut it short. Now let's add the little purple detail. This is optional, you don't have to do this, so if you don't want to do that, you can just skip this part. So for that, I'm gonna grab my glue, and I'm gonna grab my purple yarn. However, I still have a bit of purple yarn left, which I used for sewing on the belly. So I'm gonna be using this right here. And I'm gonna put a bit of glue right in this ear right here. So I'm gonna push it up here. I'm gonna squeeze it a little bit and put some glue on there. Okay, let's close it up. And then let's grab the purple strand, and I'm gonna twist it to really make sure that it's one strand and that it's not splitting here at the end. And I'm just gonna push it right into this upper part right here. I'm gonna push it in with my nail, and I'm gonna attach it to the bit of glue that I've put on there. Okay, and then I'm just gonna cut it short on this side right here. Like that. I'm gonna make sure that there's a little bit of blue around it. And that's already it. Now this ear is finished. We're gonna do the exact same thing for the other ear here as well. So you can go back into the video and sew this one on here, and I will see you once they're both attached. Okay, so one small detail which is different for the second ear is that when you have sewn the 2 top stitches together, the yarn end will be on the wrong side of the ear, because we're gonna attach this side of the ear to Eeyore. So to get it to the back of my work, I'm just gonna move to the other side. I'm gonna grab one string here, like this. And then when sewing it onto Eeyore, I'm gonna go through the back stitch first, and then I'm gonna move from back to front instead of going from front to back, which I did right here. Okay, so once both of the ears are attached, let's make the arms and the legs. For making the arms and the legs, we're gonna start off by making a magic circle with our blue yarn. And we're just gonna do 3 single crochet into the magic circle. So let's do that. 1, 2, and 3. Then we can already close the magic circle. like that. Then we can cut off the yarn end, leave a bit of end to it, like this. And then we can already pull it through. Now you already have one arm or leg finished. We need a total of 4 of these. Okay, once you got 4 of them, let's already attach them to the body. Okay, so let's first attach the arms. We're going to put them in between round 10 and 11, so in between here. And let's look for a stitch on this side where we want the arm to be. I think this one right here. So I'm going to go in to a stitch somewhere randomly, not too far away from where I want the arm to be. Then I'm going to come out of the stitch where I want the arm to be. I'm going to pull it through like that. Then I'm going to move one stitch to the back and I'm going to pull the other yarn end through that stitch. Okay. And then I can check at the front whether I like the way that it's positioned. I think that looks fine. Now we're gonna look for the other arm as well. So in between round 10 and 11. For example, this stitch right here. Pull it through. Then we're gonna go back into this stitch and we're gonna move one stitch to the back. And then I'm gonna grab the other yarn end. Okay, and pull it through. Okay, I think that looks okay from the front. Let's first attach the legs as well. So we're going to put those in between round 13 and 14, which is the same as the bottom of the belly. So let's go into a random stitch, not too far away. Let's come out of a stitch where I want the first leg to be. Let's grab one strand, pull it through. Then we're going to move one stitch to the side and we're going to pull through the other yarn end as well. Okay, like that. Then I'm going to do the same thing right here. Okay, move one stitch to the side and grab the other yarn end. Okay. Something like that. And right now we haven't secured them yet, so you can check whether you like the way that they are positioned. And if not, you can still change it. So I think I like the way this looks. So now I'm gonna grab one arm right here and I'm gonna grab the 2 strands coming out of the same stitch. And I'm gonna make a double knot here and I'm gonna pull it very tightly, like that. And then I'm gonna cut it short. And by that, the first arm is attached. I'm gonna do the same thing for these right here. Okay, so now we have already added most of the details. We still need to make the tail, the hair, and the eyebrows and the nostrils. Let's first make the tail of Eeyore. Okay, so the tail has 3 small parts. So the blue tail, the bow, and a bit of hair. Let's start by making the blue tail right here. So for that, we're gonna grab our blue yarn and we're gonna start off by making a slip knot. And for making the slip knot, make sure you leave quite a long end here because we're gonna need that for attaching it to the body as well. Okay. So something like that is enough. Then we're gonna chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then we're gonna do 1 single crochet into the next 4 chains. So we're gonna skip the first chain, and from the second chain onward we're gonna do 1 single crochet in the next 4 chains. Okay, so let's do 1 single crochet, 2, 3 and 4. Like that. Now this part is already finished, so let's cut it short, leave a bit of end to it and pull it through. Okay, now this tail is done. Now let's make the little bow, and for that I'm gonna use my pink yarn, and we're gonna start off by making a magic circle. Now into the magic circle we're gonna do 1 slip stitch, 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet. So for that we're gonna yarn over, go into the magic circle, pull up a loop. Now you got 3 loops on your hook. You're gonna yarn over and pull through all of the loops at once. Okay, we're gonna make 1 more half double crochet. We're gonna make 1 single crochet, 1 slip stitch, another slip stitch, a single crochet, 2 half double crochet, 1 single crochet and 1 slip stitch. Okay, that's it. Then we're gonna close the magic circle. Like that. And make sure that you leave a long end, because we're gonna need that for creating the little bow and for sewing it onto the tail. So make sure you leave a long end right here and cut it short. Okay, then you can pull it through. Okay, now let's first hide this short yarn end right here, which is from the magic circle. So grab your needle and attach it and just move through some random stitches. Like that. Push it through and cut it short. Okay, so now we're gonna create the little bow shape by wrapping the yarn end around the middle a couple of times. And while doing that, we're gonna make sure that we keep a lot of tension on the yarn. So let's just do that. We're gonna wrap it around the bow and really tighten it like this. Okay. Then we're gonna wrap it around a couple of times. Make sure you have a lot of tension on there. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it around once more. And once you're happy with the way it looks, we're carefully gonna make sure that the back of the bow is gonna be facing us. So we're gonna try to keep these strands here in place with our fingers. And on the back of our work, we're gonna go underneath these strands right here that we just created with our darning needle, like this. And I'm just gonna push it through there. Okay, and pull it very tightly, like this. This already helps a lot. Then I'm gonna go underneath these once again to make it more secure. Okay, and let's check whether that looks Nice. Okay, I think that looks great. So now I'm gonna make a knot here, and I'm gonna make it on either on this side of the bow or on this side of the bow, right next to these strands right here. Okay, so I'm gonna make a knot right here because my yarn end's already on this side of the strands. So I'm gonna move through some random stitches here close to these strands. I'm gonna create a loop. I'm gonna go through the loop and I'm gonna pull it tightly to create a knot here. Like that. Now we're gonna put this bow to the side for now. Let's first add the hairs on the tail. Okay, so for making the hairs, I'm just gonna cut off 2 smaller strands of black yarn, and then we're gonna sew it onto the bottom of the tail right here. Okay, so these don't need to be too long. Something like this is already enough. Like that. Then we're gonna attach these 2 yarn ends to the darning needle. Like that. Then we're gonna go through the bottom of the tail right in the middle here. So, for example, let's just go through this stitch right here and pull it through. Okay. Now we're just gonna make a double knot into these 2 yarn ends at the same time. So, like this. Make sure that it's still in the middle while doing this. And make another one. Okay. Now we're gonna cut these hairs shorter later on. However, I'd like to first attach the bow to the tail because then you're really gonna be able to see how much of the hair is sticking out at the bottom here. So let's first attach the bow right here. So for that, we're gonna attach the needle to the yarn end. And we're gonna attach the bow right above the hairs here. So let's see, our yarn end is a bit to the left here on the bow. So let's attach it to the left side a bit here as well. Like that. Then on the other side of the tail, we're gonna go through a stitch a bit more to the other side. And we're gonna attach that to some strings on the other side of the bow. So right here, for example. Okay, and just secure that. Okay. Now I'm gonna go over the tail a couple of times so that it's really secure. So I'm gonna go through the strings on this side of the bow again. And I'm gonna make sure that my pink yarn is going over the tail on the back. And I'm gonna move over the tail a couple more times. Okay, once you're done with that, we can once again make a knot here. So just go through a random string close to the yarn end. Create a loop, then go through the loop and tighten it. Then we're gonna move through some random stitches on the bow. Like that, and just push it through. Okay, then you can cut it short. Then the bow is attached. Okay, now we can cut the hairs of the tail shorter. So let's do that. Grab your scissors. And remember that you can always cut it shorter, but you can't cut it longer. So once you've cut it, it's gone. So preferably a bit too long first. Okay, then I'm gonna untwist the ends to make sure that it looks more like hair instead of yarn. Okay, something like this. Okay, I'm gonna cut it a bit shorter. Okay, I think this is a good length for the tail. I might cut it a bit shorter later on, but I think this is okay for now. Now let's attach the tail to the body, and we're gonna attach it to the back of our work, right in between round 12 and 13. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13, so right underneath here. And here we're gonna look where the middle is. So we're gonna need 2 holes for attaching both of the tops here. So I think I'm gonna attach it right there. So I'm gonna grab my crochet hook, I'm gonna move into a random stitch, and I'm gonna come out of a stitch where I want the tail to be. Okay, then I'm gonna grab one of the 2 yarn ends at the top, and I'm gonna pull it through. Okay, I'm gonna check once again whether this is in between round 12 and 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep, okay. Then we're gonna go back into this space where the other yarn end is, and we're gonna move 1 stitch to the side, and here we're gonna grab the other yarn end. Okay, then you can check whether it's in the middle and whether you like the way it looks. I think that's fine for me, so I'm gonna make a double knot into the yarn ends. Okay, then we can cut it short, and then the tail is attached. And I think I'm gonna cut the hairs a bit shorter, so I'm gonna do that now. Something like this. Okay, now the tail is done. Okay, so now let's sew on the nostrils and the eyebrows. And for that, I'm gonna grab my black embroidery yarn. However, if you don't have embroidery yarn, you can also grab your regular black yarn and untwist the ends to make it thinner. So then you would, for example, only use this. Okay. Then we're gonna attach it to our darning needle. And let's first make the nostrils. So for that, we're gonna go into a random stitch right here. and we're gonna come out of a stitch where we want the nostril to be. So I'm first gonna make the one on the right. And this might be a little more difficult because you need to go through a stitch on the body and the stitches of the muzzle. Okay, for example, one nostril here. And then I'm gonna move one row down a bit more to the inside. And there I'm gonna go in. Then I'm gonna come out once again of this stitch. Because I'm gonna make one more to make it a little bit thicker here. Okay. When I am gonna go back into this stitch right here, I'm gonna come out of a stitch on this side of the muzzle where I think I want the other nostril to be. For example, right here. Okay, and just pull it through. Okay, like that. That is our first nostril. Now let's make the second one. So for example, right here. Like that, and I'm gonna go back once more in here, and then I'm gonna come out somewhere randomly at the top for now. Okay, now you can check whether you like the way that looks. If you don't like it, you can still take it out. It's not secured yet. Okay, something like that. Okay, so now we're gonna make the eyebrows, and we're gonna put the eyebrows right above the eyes, and we're gonna make them a bit of a diagonal like this. Okay, so I'm gonna go back into this random space at the top, and I'm gonna check where I want the eyebrow to be. So for example, right there. Okay, and I'm gonna move one stitch down, one row down and a bit to the side. Like that. And let's come out of a random stitch at the top. Okay, that's our first eyebrow. Now let's decide where we want the other eyebrow to be positioned. So, for example, right there. Okay, and move one row down a bit to the side. So for example, right there. And let's come out of the same stitch where our first yarn end is. So that's right here. Okay, like that. Now you can check whether you like the way it all looks, so the nostrils as well as the eyebrows. And once you're happy with that, we can cut both of these shorter. Like this. Then we can create a double knot into the yarn ends. Make sure that you don't pull it too tightly, just a little bit is enough. Like that. Then we can cut it short and push the yarn ends into your work. Like that. Okay, so now the only thing missing is a bit of hair at the top right here. So let's do that now. For that, we're gonna grab our black yarn and we're just gonna cut off a couple of strands. I'm gonna cut off 9 hairs. However, if you want to make more hair, that's okay as well. Or if you want to make less, I'm just gonna show you how I did it for this Eeyore right here. Okay, so I'm gonna cut off 9 yarn ends. Okay. And then I'm gonna grab my darning needle and I'm gonna grab my first hair right here. And I'm gonna attach this hair right around the magic circle at the front here. So for example, let's put this hair right here and let's come out of the middle of the magic circle like this. And I'm gonna attach a total of 3 hairs here at the front. So I'm gonna grab the next one and I'm also gonna attach it right here at the front. So for example, let's go in here. And pull it through. Okay, now let's grab a third hair. And this is the last hair I'm going to be putting here at the front. So let's put it right in between there. And let's come out of the middle as well. Okay, something like that. Now I'm gonna secure these ones before I'm gonna be attaching the other hairs here, because then this won't be in the way anymore. So for that, I'm gonna pull this yarn end and see which yarn end belongs to it, right on the other side. And I'm just gonna make a double knot in here. Like that. Okay, that's one. I'm gonna do that for the others as well. So now I'm already gonna cut these a bit shorter. Not too short, something like this. I can always cut it shorter, not longer. Something like that. And then once all of the hairs are attached, we're gonna untwist it and see the way it looks, and then we can always cut it more in shape. Okay, so these are the 3 hairs at the front. Now I'm gonna grab 2 strands here. I'm gonna attach them to my darning needle. Both of them at the same time. Like that. And then I'm gonna attach them to the back of the magic circle. So this is the middle right here. And I'm gonna look for a stitch right here in between round 1 and 2. In the middle of the back. I'm gonna go in there and I'm also gonna try to come out of the middle of the magic circle. And this might be a little difficult because there are already a lot of yarn ends in there. So I'm just gonna try to get it in here. Okay, so I pulled them through off screen because I really needed to pull it towards me in order to do that. So once they are through, we are gonna do the same thing here as we did at the front. So we're gonna check which 2 are connected. And then we're gonna make a double knot in here. like that. Then we're gonna make a double knot in the other hair as well. And then we're also gonna cut these shorter. So grab your scissors and just cut it shorter, like this. Then we're gonna grab the next 2 hairs, so like that. And we're gonna attach them to our needle. And now we're gonna do the exact same thing. So we're gonna move 1 row below there and we're gonna see which stitch is most in the middle. I think that's this stitch right here. And then we're gonna come out of the same stitch of the other hairs right on top there. Okay, then we're gonna pull it through. And we're also gonna make double knots into these hairs. And once these are secured as well, we can cut these ones shorter too. Okay, now we're gonna do that for one last time. So we're gonna grab the next 2 hairs, the last 2. Okay, once these are also attached, I'm gonna cut them shorter as well. And if you'd like, you can add even more hairs going down. However, I'm gonna keep it like this for now. And let's make sure that all of the yarn ends are untwisted so that it looks more like hair. That's easier when the yarn ends are shorter. And now we're gonna cut it in shape. And for that, I'm just gonna cut it a lot shorter for most of the hairs, which are kind of wildly out of place. And this doesn't need to be perfect because Eeyore's hair is also not perfect. But just try to give it a bit of shape here. Once you're happy with the way the hair looks, your little Eeyore is finished. And I hope you liked the way yours turned out. If you liked the video, don't forget to give the thumbs up. This would really help me a lot. And if you would like to see more videos like this one, subscribe and I hope I will see you in another video. So thank you for watching and see you.